as we navigate through life, we need to have some kind of a compass, as we go through life to decide on how we make our choices. And it's interesting, the compass that people use. Some of them use tradition, some of them use culture, some of them use what their friends are doing as a compass to decide what they should do. Some of them use the norm of the day as their compass. But surely, when you look at the lives that have stood strong and the lives that have lasted their problems and stood out of their problems, are the lives that have run on principle. So it's really principles that we should be examining to decide how we should be living our lives. It's not tradition, it's not culture, it's not what others are telling us to do, and it's not what others are not telling us to do. It's really about principles. It's really about the basic eternal rules that must decide how we should live our lives. And the more we understand how to how to find out what the principles are in a particular situation, the more we become good at that, the more effective and enduring our lives will be. And principles really help us to be more grounded in life. It helps us to be more peaceful and happy, because principles have more to do with that inner peace. It has more to do with reality and fact and truth than with trying to be happy. It's not about pretension, and it's not about appearance. It's not about what we project to others. It's really about what we feel deep inside. And principles give us that kind of grounding. So it's very important for us to understand principles and to be able to apply those principles in our everyday life. We're all, probably we can understand this better when we look at an example, because illustrations and examples actually bring down lofty and sublime rules and ideas down to existential reality. So think of the example of a parent faced with the situation of having to discipline their child. Now, at some point in your life as a parent, you have to discipline and correct, admonish your children, because that's what you do when you care for them. So if that punishment is operating, or the disciplining or reprimanding of a child is operating on a principle, then the chances of it being a wholesome experience are far more. You don't punish your child because they did something wrong. You don't punish your child because you're frustrated. You don't punish your child because he or she didn't meet up to the standards that were expected of them. You punish your child because a principle has been violated. And your punishment also must stand on a principle. So when you look at life through the lens of principles or laws that are eternal, God-centered, that has humanity and compassion at its core, then we are able to make better choices. So when we think of a child who is having a difficulty trying to solve a math problem, we're actually thinking of this child's spirit. We're thinking of this child's inner person. You see, the principle here is this child needs to be taught something, but you don't do that by breaking their spirit and stripping them of all self-confidence and self-worth in the process. Because you see, the principle is about passing on knowledge to the child. It's not about trying to prove the child doesn't know anything, or trying to prove that the child is dumb or the child needs to improve. It's really based on a principle of helping this child to reach the best potential that they can. So when you're picturing this child in its best possible version, in her or his best possible version, that version does not contain a child without self-worth or self-confidence or self-respect. So you will not punish or reprimand that child without taking into consideration all these other needs of that child. So when you punish that child, you will not strip them of their self-worth and self-dignity. So that's the beauty of having principles in your mind. It's not just doing the right thing, it's about doing the right thing on a particular principle. So let's try to keep that in mind, that life is far more than just, trying to teach. It's trying to teach on a principle. You have to go a little more deeper and ask yourself. And once you find that principle, you always use that as a measuring rod or as a gauge to measure the rightness of your action. You use that as a standard to measure the reach and the stretch of how far you can go in a particular situation. And so running on the wheels of principle makes life far more simple. It makes life far more relatable, and it makes life far more successful in the long run. It might take a little hard work in the beginning, but once we get this idea of principles and how important it is to run our lives on it, then life becomes far more adorable, admirable, appreciative to ourselves and to others. That's all for today. I hope you subscribe to this channel if you feel this is of any use to you, and do comment, talk about how you feel about these views on navigating through life using principles as a tool. And thank you for your time.